Welcome to the Creation Ship. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you 2 ways to use INKTENSE blocks as we make some mixed media cards. This is the last of the 5 for Fall projects. Here's a peek of the other projects that you may want to go and check out. They all use napkins from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a link and a coupon code in the description box below. So today I am making not 1 but 2 cards. There's a lot of repetition, so I won't show the footage. I'm working on 6x6 mixed media cards, but you can make cards, you can use mixed media paper and fold it to this size. I like this size, and then with my envelope punch board I can make envelopes with this. I'm putting them in this little pocket to keep the backside from getting a lot of excess materials and dirties. I admit it, I'm a very messy creator. I've applied a coat of gesso to the fronts of both of the cards. Now this napkin, this is a focal image that comes from a napkin called Pumpkin Trio and one of the new fall releases, and I love the color scheme. We've got some of that warm yellow, orange, burnt orange, and subtle greens. So I've taken off the excess plies, and now I'm using my liner brush to water cut out the focal image. I'm getting rid of all that excess napkin. Now, if the napkin's white, you can get away with decoupaging more of it on because it'll go translucent and you won't see it. If the napkin is colored, you will still see it depending on the color background that you use. So sometimes you need to be aware of that and make adjustments accordingly. Now, right now, there's all those fronds underneath the pumpkins, and I am water cutting around them because I'm not sure if I want to keep them or not. So I'm keeping my options open at this stage, and later on when I'm making some final composition decisions, that's when I'll decide to keep them or not. So this fits right on here. I can put a sentiment up there. So now we're ready to deal with the background of the card. And these are mixed media cards, so we're going to use some more mediums. And here I'm going to use thick gesso, and I'm putting it through this TCW stencil called Chicken Wire Reverse. I love this. It gives a very nice small pattern to the background. Now I'm using thick gesso. You can substitute modeling paste. That'll give a little more texture than the thick gesso, but both would work. So don't think you have to go out and buy thick gesso, but I do love using thick gesso because it gives that intermediary amount of texture. So you can see that that's on there. I do take time to clean my stencil. Once everything's completely dry, I get out my INKTENSE blocks, and I've got a green, an orange, and a yellow. Those colors are what's in the napkin. And I'm just going to scribble this onto the gessoed and surface. Then I'm going to activate it with the brush, with my finger, and blend it. And I love how the INKTENSE blocks blend on here. They give that real watercolor look. It's soft, it's matte. I can't get this look with my acrylic paints. Now INKTENSE blocks are water soluble, and very much like watercolor, but unlike watercolor, they are permanent once they're activated. So they will not reactivate if you put wet medium on them, and that makes it easier when you're gluing things down or doing future steps onto a background. So I'm just adding more color here, tweaking the color, blending it. Right now, until it's completely dry, I can take a baby wipe it off. Really, I can manipulate it in a lot of ways. If I don't like where I've put the color, I can actually just remove it And having that gessoed surface is the reason for that. The gesso surface turns it into a non-porous surface. It's not soaking into the raw paper. So my goal here is to just use the colors that were in the napkin in the background. And it's bringing out some of that texture from the gesso, the thick gesso through the stencil. And I'm loving how that's looking. But if I glue that down on the colored background, it's going to distort the colors of this napkin focal. So to avoid that, I'm going to glue that down onto just a sheet of copy paper. And typically I use recycled copy paper where there's print on the other side. You don't see that, and I'm just saving and repurposing something and saving it from the recycle bin. Once that's completely dry, I'm cutting it out, and I realized, do I really want to cut around all these fronds? I wasn't in the mood to fussy cutting. I really rarely am. And I think, you know what? I can cut that out. I'll do it with this napkin. I've got 3 others from this one napkin and another whole napkin to do. I can do it in a different way. I can actually add that if I want, but you know, I'm going for simplicity here. I like the texture there, but I'm going to use white paint on this background through that same chicken wire reverse stencil. I need to press a little harder. It's not coming through. So you kind of have to temper it. You don't want it to bleed under. You want to get a precise stenciling, but it has to come through. And this is a very, very fine stencil. So you need to apply a little bit of pressure. But I'm liking the way that it looks. And then in a minute, you're going to see a close-up of this white stenciling. It's softening the background, and especially on some of the darker areas, it really shows through. And I like having it with the thickened gesso and with the white paint. I'm using medium-bodied Liquitex Basics. So it isn't seeping through the stencil. If you're using a more liquid paint, it may seep under the stencil and you may not get as precise. And there is the close-up of it. I absolutely love, love, love this background. And I'm going to remember to use this on a different page. Those colors, that technique with the INKTENSE blocks, everything. So now I'm using the INKTENSE block. I'm getting some of that green on my angle brush, and I'm just edging the page with that. Want a little bit of that green color around it. But again, I'm sticking to the same 3 colors and then adding black and white. So there we have it. I'm loving the look of the chicken wire reverse. It's kind of a small circular fashion. Matches the pumpkins. It all goes together really well. And that's what you want when you select stencils. The size has to work. It all has to work together. Now I'm ready to glue my focal point down. So I'm using gel medium because remember there's copy paper and napkin there. And I'm gluing that down, pressing it down, and putting a good coat on top. I want to seal that napkin. I want to make sure it's a non-porous surface because I'm going to add some shading, and actually I'm going to use those INKTENSE blocks in the second way, actually the third way because I use it to edge, to colorize the napkin. I don't want to change the color so much. So I'm looking at my swatches that I have with my INKTENSE block and just looking for the perfect match or mixing colors to get that perfect match. INKTENSE blocks, when they go over, when you colorize with this, they're very translucent. So you're not getting that solid opaque color. You're still seeing whatever was below. I'm just enhancing that color just a smidge so it stands out from the same color background. Alternatively, I could have gone for a background that was green and blue. That would have looked really good with those oranges because they're complementary colors. It would have given it a very, very different look. Here I'm using black acrylic paint and I'm shading those pumpkins. I want to add a little bit more definition to them, make them stand out from the background. This makes it look a little bit more yours, makes it stand out. I could have changed the colors of these pumpkins by using gesso and acrylic paint if I wanted to. And if I was doing a mass make of these cards, I could have definitely done that, where it's basically the same thing, but I've done a different background and I've colorized them differently. Because there's black on the pumpkins now, I want some black on the edging around the card. So I'm using that same black acrylic paint to edge. But you still see the green that was there. I just go back and I add more as it dries. You can always add more, it's harder to take off. Then I wanted a sentiment, and I went into my Grateful, Thankful, Blessed sentiment pack, and I had this one called Choose Joy that I had printed on copy paper when I was printing something else, so I decided to use it. When you print on tissue paper, when you glue it down, it becomes translucent and you see whatever's in the background. And I'm opting, since I love that background so much up here, I don't want to cover it up. So I'm opting to put it on the pumpkin. I really wanted to put the saying, "Hello Pumpkin," or something with pumpkin in it, but I was a little too lazy to type it up and start from scratch. So I used what was in my stash. And that's why you have a stash at the ready that makes it easy when you don't want to do all the work or start from scratch. Then I'm grabbing my gold splatter paint, and once everything's dry, I'm just going to splatter it with gold. And then I think off camera I splattered it with a little bit of black too. It just needed a little bit more. Or is it a case of I didn't know when to stop? You tell me. As always, when I give you ideas, when I'm suggesting this, if you don't have the exact napkin, use something that you have that's close, or something totally different, and follow the steps. We're on to the next card, and with this one, I lost some footage. I apologize. I had painted it unbleached titanium, and then I stenciled with the Art Deco leaves with yellow oxide. The napkin that you see on the left-hand side is called Sunflower, and I already watercut the part out that I want to use. So basically I followed the same steps. Now, don't get excited about that background. It looks okay. I'm not 100% sure that it's not too much. I have my doubts at this stage, but I keep going and I think, oh, I'm going to use that chicken wire reversed. I told you that was one of my favorite stencils, and I'm going to add a little bit of that green that's in the leaves to that upper part of the card. So I get out my green paint and I text that in, and again, lost footage. I don't know, I guess I was trying to do too much. Once I glued down the napkin with the fluid matte medium, just like I did the first card, I'm making sure that it's 100% dry before I attempt to cut it. You'll avoid any problems if you just give it full time to dry. Then I use my scissors and cut off the excess napkin. Now I can save that piece of napkin and use that just as collage paper on a first layer on an art journal page. So I have a bin that I keep all those little bits in. So I'm thinking I do not like the stenciling that I did. It's too much, it doesn't really add. So here's what you do when it doesn't work. You grab the gesso and you take it back to ground zero. You take it back to a white gessoed page. Now I've got to work around the napkin, and that's okay. It's not exactly difficult. And at the end of the day, when someone looks at this card, nobody's going to be the wiser of the mistakes that you had. So I'm just using my finger here. I've got the heat tool out. I'm drawing the layers. I want to knock back that stenciling. I think it competed too much with the focal image. If I was doing this on an art journal page and there was a lot more page showing, that might have been able to work better. But you know what? You try, and you know, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And there's always gesso. So I'm just adding a little bit of gesso here. And once the gesso's dry, I will be coming in, there you go, with the unbleached titanium. I'm getting a mottled look, and it really didn't take me that much extra time to do this. Once that's dry, once again, I'm getting out my INKTENSE blocks, and this is the second way. We kind of saw me doing it with the first one where I colorized those pumpkins, and now I'm going to colorize the sunflowers. And I'm going to slightly alter some of them. Now some of the petals and the leaves got distorted because I had mixed up the background, and then I went in with gesso, so I covered them with gesso. So I'm going to paint those. I'm going to deepen the colors, so I'm going to put a lot more layers of color on there. And I'm just going to extend some of those petals a little bit more and even add some petals. I really like that burnt sienna look, so I come in on all the sunflowers and add a little bit more of that to this card. And this is just like watercolor. When it's wet on wet, you can just drop in a little color and it disperses so nice and easily. And I'm using a very small, I think it's an angle brush, quite honestly, but a round brush, a liner brush. I'm just deepening the colors, and I'm going and matching. And to match those colors, I'm looking at the swatches that I have in my INKTENSE blocks tin. And you see that paper, I'm just trying it out on the paper to see that it's the right shade. But because it's all been covered with matte medium, it is non-porous. So if you do make a mistake, you can probably get away with erasing it using a baby wipe. INKTENSE blocks, again, are permanent when they're dry, but until they're completely dry, you can manipulate them. Here I'm adding a lot of that more burnt color and just tweaking the colors ever so much. And again, if I was doing a multiple make of this card, I could use a different section of the napkin on each one. In fact, one napkin could make probably 6 cards if you use just a portion. It doesn't have to fill the whole 6 by 6, or I might do a 5 by 7 card. Here I'm using the stylus and just some of the INKTENSE block, and I'm just making these dots that were there stand out a little bit more. So this card is really, really, really about the focal image, which is why I got rid of that stenciling. It didn't work. Now, if I was making a different background and there was a different focal image, I may have loved that background. So don't throw away the idea, that Art Deco leaf stencil with a little bit of the chicken wire reverse. Those stencils worked really well. That was a good idea. It just wasn't a good idea for this composition. Now I'm doing these two projects on cards. This could be on a mixed media board, it could be on an art journal page, it could be on a canvas, a wood panel. The substrate can change, but follow the same techniques and you'll win. As I said at the beginning, the napkins that I've used in this card making, as well as all the napkins that I've used in the Fall 5 for Fall series, are available at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There is a link and a coupon code in the description box below. So there we have it. I adore this. It's looking great, but you know what? Why leave it at that? Now I could have left it at that. I just wanted a little bit more patterning, a little more grunge in the background. So I grabbed one of my script stamps, brown acrylic paint, and I'm stamping it on, very imperfect. And once that's dry, I'm taking that unbleached titanium and giving it a wash and knocking it back. I don't want that to be forward. I want it to be further back. So if I was starting from scratch, I would stamp the script first, then colorize, and that would get the same effect. But I guess I came in the back door. It was a roundabout trip. Here I'm edging with the brown, and I really like how that looks. I opt out to not do any shading around the sunflowers. I'm just leaving it as they are. They're fairly small, like the sunflowers themselves, but that napkin I think can have many uses. Maybe you'll see it again in the near future. I grab a sentiment from my Grateful, Thankful, Blessed sentiment pack, which is also available as a digital download that you can purchase from Ninny's Napkins. It would look nice here, but I'm putting it up here. I'm still not happy with that background, so I'm gonna put the sentiment on top and kind of hide what I don't like. Artist trick. This you could have done and printed it on tissue paper. Again, I'm using what I have and what's handy, so this makes it a quick, easy card. A series of this on a wall would be, and I could have the word grateful, thankful, blessed. 3 wood panel 6x6. Ooh, I like that idea. Now I grabbed my gold splatter paint and I'm going to splatter that. I really like the gold on cards. I think they just really make them a little more special. And there we have it. The second card done. Which one's your favorite? Let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, go get creative.